meanie gang is forever.
Man, what an interesting week in gaming, to say the least. Raging Tigers is joining me today. Sony announced that they're no longer doing physical games after January 1st, 2028. And I assume that'll be around the time the PlayStation 6 or stirrings of that should be coming. What are your thoughts on how that's going?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that a lot of people saw coming. I guess most of us were always wondered how it was going to happen, but where we are is entirely predictable. When you go back and look at a lot of the data that has been put out, so Circana mentioned that, which they're they're a data company that keeps track of the sales of really any and all things software and gaming. But Circana pointed out that on PlayStation platform, 85% of game sales today are digital on the PlayStation. On the Xbox, it's 90%. So at this point, if you're trying to reduce costs and you see physical disc as a impediment to reducing costs, it makes sense to cut it. Because while there's a ton of backlash and outrage on the internet, I would be loath to remind the gaming community, the Twitter community, that we represent a very, 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 very small portion of the general video game consumer. And so while I've even seen like change.orgs and petitions going on, none of that's going to change. It's here. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's I think the study came out a long time ago, but like the average person who buys games buys like 2 or 3 a year, which is like Call of Duty maybe, and then like 1 or 2 sports games, and that's really it. And so the gaps that are being filled with those games are free to play games like Fortnite, Apex, Warzone, Roblox, that kind of thing. So, like people don't even really, some of those games don't even require PS Plus to play. So a lot of people don't even have that either. And in the rare event that they do, they might see a game that they like from the PS Plus, like free catalog, and they'll download and play that. But more often than not, they're not spending a whole lot of money on like actual new games or anything like that.
Yep. I was listening to a blog, Windows Central from all places, and it brought out a good point. Like you mentioned Fortnite, for example, right? Because at least half to 60% of the PlayStation user base is pretty much just Fortnite, Apex, and Warzone players. Well, let's take Fortnite, for example. Fortnite no longer requires you to have either a PS Plus subscription or a Xbox Game Pass subscription to play the game. So if you think of it from a revenue standpoint, if Sony's in a position to where they're losing money on every console they sell, which is typically the norm for as far as the business model, and then make it up back end on software, if the majority of your base is just buying a PlayStation to play Fortnite with their friends, and they're not subscribed to PS Plus, but they are on the network playing their PlayStation, you're getting zero revenue. In fact, you could make an argument that you're making negative revenue from that gamer, unless they're, of course, spending, V-Bucks and microtransactions and stuff like that. But even that, Sony's only collecting a small percentage of the cut of V-Bucks. And that's assuming that the user who bought the V-Bucks went onto the Sony marketplace and purchased it there. Right. Because if they had simply went to, a gas station or GameStop or Best Buy and got V-Bucks, Sony's getting no percentage of that. So
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like normally they'll get like I think it's 30% on like sales for games. I don't know if that's the same with like the digital currency and stuff, but yeah, to your point, if they're not buying it there, because I mean, like
Yeah.
how many times have like parents said like, "Oh, I just bought this kid V-Bucks, so he'd like leave me alone," in like the line at Walmart or Dollar Tree or something. So
Right.
yeah, like
Right.
it doesn't even matter like where it's redeemed. You have to actually like buy it from the PlayStation storefront, and so. Yeah, you might have. I mean, you can get a good amount, but I think the majority of it is just like, oh, I bought these cards and stuff, and now you can just redeem them or something like that. It's the same thing with like
Yeah.
Robux, like Roblox in general. Like, I don't think you can buy Robux from the PlayStation storefront. I think you actually have to get the cards or something. So even that one's like a sinkhole of like, hey, you can't really do anything with it. I could be wrong, but yeah, it's those games again. Like they're getting people on the console, but they're not unless they're buying like microtransactions. Like they don't even require that you have PS Plus. So it's kind of like yeah. And so when you think about it, all those people that are not genuinely buying games, and the little of us that are, like I don't get. I don't know why people are so upset about it now. Like, not that they shouldn't be upset, but we knew this was coming. Like, even if you got a physical game of it, right, it still needs to be online to check in with the server and get the latest updates and stuff like that. Like, the game as you know it, being a complete thing, like on the disc, has died in like the early PS3 era.
Yeah. The preservation aspect is weakened, was always weakened, at least with maybe not necessarily in PS3 era, but certainly halfway into this console generation, the preservation aspect of physical media was always in question. Especially when we get into live service games. Like if you bought a physical copy on Concord, it's a coaster. If you bought a physical copy of High Guard, it is a coaster. If you bought
Right.
physical copy of The Crew, coaster. Like I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And then with the Call of Duty games, the games are collectively too large to even fit on a disc. So there is no logistical way to fit the way that Call of Duty is meant to be deployed. There's no way to fit the entire thing on a disc. So the preservation, I think. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. To that Call of Duty point, like they could go the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth route, where it's like 2 Blu-rays or something. But why would they want to do that? Because then they would have to double their costs to do that.
Right.
So like, they're definitely not going to do it. They could, but they absolutely wouldn't. Even if it's going to cost them pennies on the dollar to do it, now it's going to cost them double pennies on a dollar, and they're not going to do that. Which will essentially be landfill at some point anyway. So.
Yep. What's the value proposition, basically? Which is, I think, for people who care about video game preservation, we should be moving away from the idea of just expecting a OEM or software developer or publisher to front the cost of physical media, and instead advocate for some way for us to preserve our games, save our games, back them up on some type of media on our own, whether it's an external hard drive or whether it's our own optical disc or some other storage medium that they come up with. That to me is a more viable solution than this thing we were doing, which was just like, well, I'm just going to make sure that every game that I'm interested in is on physical. And then if not, I'm just going to not buy the game and just buy games that I know are available on physical. Because that was always a sort of John Henry situation where you're just fighting against progress and losing.
Well, and to that point though, like being able to, like, let's say that like, you know, developers are like, okay, well if you can figure out how to store these games, then you can have backups of them or whatever, right? Well, let's use Call of Duty as an example. Like it can't fit on one Blu-ray. So it will be up to the community to figure out how to split it onto multiple Blu-rays or whatever, if that's the case. And then never mind the whole like, because now a lot of these games are just, they're also doing like the license check to make sure that you own the game. So, you know, that could be a little iffy too, but I just don't know that, that it's going to be worth the fight. You know, like I feel like this is a losing battle for preservationists, like from this console generation forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, you can't even really call it a battle because it's really just a foregone conclusion. So it's
Right.
so again, it would be better off, getting together with the community and coming up with some community-based way, some open source way to back up your games, because you can do this on PC, like Steam. Some games, well, actually, no, all of your games you can back up. Now, the question, like you mentioned earlier, with the DRM, some of the games that you purchase on Steam have DRM associated with it. Some games don't. And then, of course, there's famously Good Old Games, or GOG, where none of the games on the GOG marketplace, from what I understand, have DRM check-in stuff on it. So when you download it, you can back it up, put it whatever. It's essentially yours forever, and it satisfies that ownership aspect that people want and they're trying to hold on to. And then you could then advocates like movements such as Stop Killing Games and others, similar activism. You could then go and advocate for the right to have an open platform to do that.
Right. Well, the problem
is kind of
sorry.
Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah. I was going to say, because the problem with some of the things that Stop Killing Games is, one of the things that they're running into is some of the proposals that they're trying to go up against when they make proposals to either U.S. government, the U.K. government, or whomever, and going up against the ESA, is most of the stuff that I've seen places the onus on the publisher. And it is very, very, very difficult to compel government to force a private organization to do something they don't want to do if it's not necessarily something that is a need conducive to the public good. Like, we don't need video games and entertainment. It's a want. So you can't really say, hey, you must keep your servers on. But what you can do, which in some cases they've made slight strides in, and this has also become the case in the right to repair movement, which is, hey, allow the community some sort of reasonable access so that they can preserve what they lawfully purchased as an individual, while at the same time respecting copyright and trademark law.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because the irony is, in its current state, there aren't many games that you could, in like 20 years, like of this generation or even last generation, where it's like, okay, you can pop that disc back into this current gen console 20 years later and expect it to run. That's the problem. Like, even when you own the physical disc, you just own the plastic. You don't technically like own the game, because if Sony shuts down their servers, or God forbid, just like, all right, well, we're done with PlayStation, you'll never have access to that again.
Yep. Which goes back to the whole, thing I was saying. We're going to have to advocate for some sort of community-based backup. That's the only way you're going to solve the preservation issue forward, because you cannot legally compel a private organization to preserve their games. And any of this Stop Killing Games stuff that has tried to go for that, that's why they've been losing. Although one thing that I'd like to bring up, because I saw a common theme, because just out of curiosity, I watched maybe a dozen reactions from many a YouTuber, more specifically what I'd like to call PS fanboys, Sony fanboys, or Sony ponies, as they are, as the term of endearment known. But one thing that they commonly bring up was the just before the 7th gen got kicked off, where Sony famously had the video, where they said, hey, this is step one of how we game share on PS4. You just hand them the game because we don't have any DRM, blah, 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 blah. And they were like, and people, one of the things that people do with that clip in reflection to what's going on now is they say, what happened to that Sony? That Sony was all about being customer friendly. The problem is we typically have a short memory and we've lost a lot of context as to how things went down the way they went down. First of all, let's get one thing clear. Microsoft was not by itself when it came up with the idea of having this system that checked in all the time for DRM. Both the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox were going to have a feature like this. What happened is Microsoft made the mistake at the time, that, hindsight, of going first and basically announcing and explaining how this system was going to work. And at the time, objectively speaking, it was poorly implemented, extremely aggressive, like something like, hey, it's going to check in every hour or 2 hours or something crazy like that, to the point where you would functionally, your system would functionally have to be online all the time for you to play your games. And I think in terms of that implementation, it was done rather sloppily. However, the fact of the matter is that both companies were working on a similar formula. Why? Two things. When the PS4 and Xbox One were announced, one of the features that they had talked about is, hey, we want to eliminate loading as we know it forever. Because even though the Blu-ray drives were fairly fast, as well as the drive that was in the Xbox, they still dealt with loading times. So one of the advances that they were looking to do was get rid of loading times, similar to how it is on PC. Well, the reason why PC had eliminated loading times was because the entire game ran on the hard drive. You would install the game on your hard disk and run it straight from the hard disk. And just by doing that, you eliminated load times. However, as an added benefit, what Microsoft was trying to do with physical game purchases is say, hey, you go to GameStop, you buy your game, you take the CD out or disc out, you pop it in your console, install the game, and then from that point on, you take the disc out, put it in your case, throw it on the shelf, and from that point on, you never have to have the disc in the system again, which sounds great. The problem is without DRM, there's nothing to stop me from installing on that Xbox, taking that same disc, going to my buddy, his buddy, cousins, a bunch of people down the street, hell, maybe even cracking the disc and making multiple copies so we can install it on several consoles from just one copy. And that's why the whole DRM thing was set in place. Again, it was extremely aggressive and poorly implemented, but there is a reality that could have existed that if it was done more reasonably and it was more convenient to the consumer and didn't have to check in so much and there was a better way to do it, we would be in a future to where this discussion we're having about the convenience of digital versus the preservation of physical, we would be in a reality where that would have never been a conversation because people would have the same exact benefits of digital that they do with physical. Ironically, Xbox is working on it's called Positron, but it's essentially using the same concept and technology that they were going to use for the Xbox One. But apparently they're working on a tool that will allow you to digitize your physical collection. So if you have a bunch of Xbox One games and Series X games, depending on which one specifically, you'll be able to somehow, using a tool, convert them into digital licenses. So that way, when the Project Helix inevitably comes out, you will achieve backward compatibility that way. Because most of us are under the expectation and assumption that Project Helix will not have an optical drive. So the question becomes, well, how do they achieve backwards compatibility? Well, if they are able to release this Positron tool, whether it be a USB drive and then software that you run on your PC or natively on your Series console, that solves that problem. You can do that generational leap without having to worry about prepackaging a disk drive with the console. Not sure if Sony is working on a similar solution, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had some sort of method, because again, both consoles did have DRM initially planned at the beginning before Microsoft snafu. And if you don't believe me, any of you guys who own a launch PS4 or launch Xbox One, do a hard reset on the device, and the minute you turn it back on, you're going to have to do a day one update. And that day one update was specifically to remove the DRM check-in tool for the console.
Yeah, I remember that stuff. Yeah, I just the way it is now, it's like, because again, like, sorry, I lost like my train of thought of what I was going to say. Sony's not interested in backing up. Like, they're not interested in their history necessarily, though. So that's going to be the thing on Sony. Like, with Microsoft, every console generation has been backwards compatible to some extent. Not 100%, but a good selection of games have been backwards compatible. After after PS3 was the last one that was compatible over like 3 generations. PS4, I don't think any PS1 classics came out on that. You could download some PS2, and then PS3 you had to stream through their like PS Now thing or whatever. And it's like the same thing on PS5, where you could buy a game and get the PS4 and 5 version for some reason still. But then also, then I get it. I get why. But if you have a PS5, you really don't need both. But you still can only stream PS3, and then you might have to stream PS2 as well, and then maybe there'll be like a PS1 over there. So like, I honestly think that like just I think PS6, when it comes out, may only be backwards compatible with 5. And if we're lucky, the classics will be able to transfer over or something like that. But I can see they're not really interested in preservation, especially because they'll try to sell it to you again.
But let's be clear. Like, the PS4, the backwards compatibility of PS5 and 4 is just a consequence of the architecture and way in which the 4 and 5 are designed. Other than the fact that the PS5 is more powerful, it's running on the same architecture, which is x86, which coincidentally is the exact same architecture that PCs run on. The Xbox runs on the same architecture as well, which is why Xbox One games are 100% compatible with Series X games. They had to reverse engineer things and worked with AMD to get 360 and OG Xbox games to work on the Xbox One and Series X. But Xbox One and Series are natively compatible. And since we at least know that the PS6 is not leaving that architecture, it will also be x86, it would be within reason to believe that it will work with 4, 5, and then, of course, 6. The question then becomes, what about the physical media, though? Because if it doesn't have a disk drive, then the people who have these physical libraries, they're shit out of luck. But the people who build digital libraries, they just download their games on the new system and they're off to the races. And for people who have been like myself, who are in the Xbox ecosystem, we're already used to this. When we moved from the One to the Series X, most of us were digital anyway because of things like Xbox Play Anywhere and Xbox Game Pass. So because of that, when the friction that most of us as Xbox gamers had when we moved on to the later console, that friction was non-existent because we already had digital libraries. And even Nintendo, anywhere between, depending on what survey you look at, 55 to 60% of their customers are digital. Even though they have a lot of customers that buy physical media, most Switch gamers I know, including you, When you move from Switch 1 to Switch 2, there was no friction. It was seamless. You just got your memory card, plopped it in your Switch 2, logged into your account, and downloaded your library, and you're off to the races.
Right. So I don't think the issue, the reason why I say I don't think Sony is going to officially going to have it backwards compatible for, not because of the architecture, it's because I don't think they're going to want to actually go that route, especially because PS4, a lot of people still actually had discs. It wasn't really until the pandemic that really got people into digital.
Yep.
So, yes, they might have the infrastructure to support it, but if Sony's not, Sony might not just support it for the fact that there might be a lot of people with disc for PS4 and they may not want to include a disc drive, or that'll be a premium add-on that you can use. But I can also, I just don't see them. I see them either just cutting it off altogether or just saying, hey, we'll offer a disc drive as a separate add-on or whatever like that. But again, that would just be for PS5, PS4 games because they're not going to do disc anymore for 6.
Yeah. I think what Sony is going to do is just basically you're going to have half an olive branch. Backwards compatibility of PS4 is going to be a digital persuasion. So if you want to carry your PS4 catalog over to PS6, you're just going to have to buy the digital copy and then play it on your PS6.
Yeah, they had something like that with PS5 where basically like well, you had to put the disc into the PS5. And
well, there's something like smart delivery, which Xbox also had smart delivery, where if you bought a disc, the game would be Xbox One or Series X, and then you would pop the disc into the system, and then it would, it would call into the Xbox service, and then it would detect which console you had, and then download the corresponding copy. So for one disc, it would have either the Xbox One or the Xbox Series version.
Yeah, PlayStation didn't really do that. What it did is like if you like Final Fantasy VII Remake, right? I had that on PS4, so I bought it on PS4, and before I got Intergrade, they were like, okay, well you can play this on PS4, or you can spend like $10 or something to get the PS5 version, but your PS4 disc will be the thing that, activates the license or whatever. But then the problem I see is that I don't think Sony will have the disc native for people to do that in the first place.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's going to be half. So if you have physical, you're just shit out of luck. But if you want to have your PS4 games, you're unfortunately going to have to buy the digital copy, which will work on PS6. Because Sony doesn't have to do anything to get PS4 games to support to work on PS6. The games will inherently work, just like on your PC. If you have an old DirectX 10 game, it's still going to run on your newer Windows machine, even though we're now on DirectX 12. Because because the architecture, the code is all backwards compatible inherently because it's running on the same type of chip. It's just the chips on PS6 are faster. So the game will just run as if it's on PS4. You're not going to get any of the performance gains that you would expect on a PS6 because it is a game written for PS4.
Yeah. I just don't see them. Yeah, I think at most it'll be the digital only, but no one's really going to be happy with their solution. I can see it.
Oh yeah, I agree. It's something that Microsoft doesn't have to worry as much about because the customer base, we're already like 90% of us are used to things that way. Another thing that I would want to call out is, a lot of people were like, well, Microsoft had already forced their consumers to go digital. No, they didn't force us. There's a difference between being forced and being incentivized.
Right.
If you want to get the best out of the Xbox ecosystem, it is actually it is actually to your detriment to buy physical because of Xbox Play Anywhere. So I play on Xbox and I play on PC. And sometimes I even stream. Well, with Xbox Play Anywhere, for one copy, for one digital purchase entitlement, you can either use that access on your PC, you can use that access on your console, you can use that access on cloud and mobile device, and then also on PC handhelds like the Xbox Ally. So they had already incentivized and trained us to give us the flexibility to move on those platforms. Because they're like, hey, if I want the freedom to move to multiple devices, I'm better off buying the digital as opposed to physical, because physical locks me to playing on one device, to playing on the console. And if I don't want to be locked to only playing that game on a console, I'm better off buying digital. Sony did not build that same ecosystem. Sony doesn't have a Play Anywhere equivalent. So if you buy the PC copy of any of their first party games, for example, all of that is on Steam. With some exceptions, like Final Fantasy is also available on Epic. It came out on Epic Game Store first. But in other words, any PC copy of a PlayStation game, you cannot join on both platforms through a single purchase. You have to buy the PlayStation copy and the PC copy if you want to move from device to device. And even then, not all of those games support cross progression, cross saving, cross that. Whereas Xbox Play Anywhere, my games are fully integrated. If I play a long RPG like Expedition 33 and I then move to PC, all of my progress, my character, my loadout, all the stuff I've done carries over seamlessly. It's as if I never switched to begin with. And Sony doesn't have that. The irony is that Sony had attempted to do something like that when it came to the Vita and PlayStation 3.
Yeah.
Because they had tried the whole cross-buy, cross-progression program, but it was a mess because some games were cross-buy. Well, all the games that were cross-buy weren't necessarily cross-progression. It was a mess, whereas Play Anywhere is just seamless.
Yeah, I remember I had gotten Ratchet and Clank Full Frontal Assault, and the Vita version came out eventually, but it wasn't cross-progression. And,
right.
And I was like, okay, I don't feel like starting this game all over.
Yeah, whereas PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale I believe that was cross-buy and cross-progression. And I think one of the Little Big Planets was possibly cross-buy, cross-progression. I can't remember. But again, on Xbox Play Anywhere, that's not an issue. And if a lot of that is overlooked, I feel like, by gaming Twitter, because most people are used to playing on a PlayStation. But if you're an Xbox gamer and you're fully locked into the ecosystem, it's like, why would you buy physical? Because you're not getting the benefit. You would only be buying physical on Xbox if you only care about preservation and nothing else. If you want full flexibility, yeah, Play Anywhere was always the better solution, especially if you have people that have multiple device preferences, because you can add at least 5 accounts, 5 devices to your Xbox account, and other people can access that same game on multiple devices at the same time. So it's just Xbox does a better job of respecting you as far as your digital purchases than Sony does. And there's also this misconception that Sony was always a more customer forward company. Ever since PS3, but arguably PS2, Sony was notorious for cutting out features and then moving on and not giving you a way to move forward whenever they did an update or anything. And you just had to deal with it. So, for example, I had an original PlayStation 2, which unfortunately got stolen. And I rebought the PlayStation 2, but it was the Super Slim, right? Well, the Super Slim didn't come with a hard drive disk. It had the built-in Ethernet, but it did not have a hard drive disk. So if I wanted to play EverQuest, shit out of luck. If I wanted to play Final Fantasy 11, shit out of luck. Or any of the games that required that 20 gigabyte hard drive that was released for the original PS2, shit out of luck. PS3 came out. Remember, one of the things you could do with PS3 was you could install Linux on it and do like all sorts of quirky stuff on it, run homebrew or just use it like a PC. And then Sony patched that out, and there was a whole class action lawsuit of people that sued Sony for the fact that they basically removed hardware functionality at the device that they paid for. And then of course, as the PS3 evolved with newer iterations, they took out features that were in previous models. Like you, in one of your videos, you talked about the PS Fat, where it's fully backwards compatible for 3 generations, as opposed to the PS Slim and the Super Slim. So it's like the launch, specifically the launch editions of the PS3, are like sought after holy grails because of the fact that as they went on, Sony ripped out backwards compatibility from newer consoles.
Yeah, I kind of struggle with that because I was thinking about getting a PS1, but I know the original PlayStation 1 has more functionality than the Slim, but I actually really like the Slim, so I'm like, damn, I don't know what I'm gonna do here.
It goes deeper than that. So if we're talking about PS1 before it went to the PSONE, the Slim, the little mini PS1 near the end of its generation.
Are you about to say about the PSX, the DVR and stuff built in? So
no, not even that. That was like a limited edition thing. So the original launch PS1 had a parallel port and a multi-AV out, like for connecting to things like PVMs and other stuff.
Yeah.
And they took that feature out of the revised PS2. So the PS2s that came out later, they removed the parallel port. And I forget what else they removed.
Yeah, it was that and the multi-AV. Because I remember I remember my friends had something where basically they can play burn discs on there. I forget what it was called, but it went in the same place where like the Game Shark used to go.
Yep. So in US, the most people just know the parallel port as being where you would put the Game Shark in. I actually had that same Game Shark. So again, when they revised the PlayStation without that parallel port, if you had a Game Shark, well, tough luck. You can't use that Game Shark anymore. But most importantly, in Japan, they use that parallel port to connect a separate accessory that they sold called a VCD player. So back in the day, before DVDs became the disc-based way we would watch movies for a while, in Asia and parts of Europe, they had what were video CDs. So people were actually selling and publishing movies on CD-ROMs. So they were putting video on CD-ROMs, and that was VCDs. And in Japan, there was an entire industry built off VCDs. So there was a VCD player that you could buy and you would install, and it would plug into that parallel port of the PlayStation 1, so that way you could watch movies and stuff on it in addition to playing games. But since VCDs was never a thing here, that's why if you were in America, you probably never heard of it.
Yeah. Speaking of Japan, apparently like the retro market over there is starting to go to shit because of all the people that have been going over there just to hunt for like retro stuff. But that's a whole
and basically if you are going to Japan for the purpose of maybe collecting and hunting for some rare deals as far as retro stuff, pretty much the worst place, it's pretty much accepted now that the worst place that you could go for that type of shopping is Tokyo. So basically Akihabara. Like
Yeah, that's where
Akihabara,
everybody's going.
yeah, Akihabara used to be the best place to go for all the best deals on retro, but because of massive tourism that's going on in Japan, because of the fact that the yen is just constantly weakening against the dollar, it's just insane. In fact, remember we literally talked yesterday, right? And I was talking about, man, it might go 162 yen to the dollar, and sure enough, yesterday morning when I checked, it was 162.33 to the dollar, and it just keeps going up. It looks like it's gone back down considerably. It's now back down to 161.09, but for a little bit it's getting insane. So because the locals in Japan are getting squeezed, they're like, look, F these foreigners, basically, we're going to hike our stuff up, to account for the massive differentiation in currency. Because if you're a tourist, we save in two ways. In Japan, there is a consumption tax, kind of like a VAT, that you pay as a local. So anything that you buy, there's essentially a national sales tax that you pay for on top of your local sales tax and whatever you pay for the game. Well, in most places where you shop as a tourist, you're exempt from the consumption tax. So a lot of the businesses especially in large cities like Tokyo, they're like, hey, we're hiking up the price of everything to absorb that savings that you would have otherwise been having when you purchase anything, including retro games. That said, all you got to do is go to the countryside and the prices go back down to normal. So if you're willing to venture out into the country towns like Fujiwara Guchiko or Nara just outside Osaka and even Fukuoka, you can that's when the prices start coming down and they're more normal.
Yeah.
So like I was watching one video, for example, a mint condition like OG Game Boy. This guy went to a shop in Akihabara, and most places that had OG Game Boys in good condition, they wanted them for like $120, sometimes $200 US equivalent. But then he went to a place and there was a person selling one for 5,000 yen, which I think was like maybe $40 or so. So, and then he bought it on the spot there. And also, you were also talking about, man, you like to see some limited edition, deep cut stuff that never made it here that people don't know about. I did not know that there was a limited edition Card Captors Sakura Game Boy Color, but apparently that thing, there was one shop that had one in the box, and it basically cost the equivalent of $1,000. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So
no,
yeah,
some of that stuff's crazy.
There's some deep stuff there, which goes back to another thing, going back to this whole, into physical media on the PlayStation side. A lot of people are saying, man, the secondhand market is gonna collapse and all the mom and pop short. No, dude. First of all, excluding GameStop, the mom and pop secondhand market stores, they don't cater to modern gaming. They have fully changed and adjusted their business model for retro gaming. And the retro gaming market is booming. And it looks like it will be for quite some time. And honestly, it looks like if one of the side effects from this whole move away from physical is people will sort of rediscover, previous generations and get into retro gaming. So, because even, you look at the price hikes of games in Japan. I mean, that's happening all over the world, especially here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the mom and pops will be fine. GameStop is another question because they didn't calibrate to the retro market when they should have. They offloaded a lot of their inventory and supply of that stuff, so they would essentially have to reinvest and re-inject themselves into the market by trying to buy up all of the retro game consoles and games in supply, and then retrofit their stores to then cater to that demographic. And I don't think they have the capital nor the will to do that. I think they're just going to be relegated to doing what they do, which is selling memorabilia, hardware, and Pokemon cards and whatever they're doing these days.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about hold on. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. Didn't want you to hear that.
Yep.
The most interesting thing about the whole argument, right, is that people are kind of shifting. Well, the shift towards retro has been going on for a little bit, right? Because a lot of people have been complaining about modern games and stuff like that. But now it's like, now more than ever after this, I've seen a ton of videos and like, oh, this is how you preserve your 360 games or blah, blah, blah. And I guess a lot of people, there's been a subsect of people that are like, oh, I'm just going to pirate these games now. I'm like, well, you can't pirate modern games. So you're only going to pirate the games that you actually can buy physical copies of and preserve that way. And I'm like, well, then preservation isn't the problem for you at that point. You were just looking for a reason to pirate. because if you're like, oh, well, I'm going to pirate because I can't get physical copies of the game. It's like, no, like, well, retro, you can. You absolutely can. And so, like, even, like, I have a physical game collection. It's not as deep as, like, towards the more modern stuff. But, like, I'm looking at it and, like, I have Phantasy Star episode 1 and 2, and then episode 3. And so I'm like, all right, I'm looking at it now.
You've been on a retro tear for a while.
Yeah. Well, and I have those. I had those for years, and like I'm looking at it, and I'm like, episode 1 and 2 is going for like $200. So I was like, oh, okay, I have some value in that or whatever. But at least it's an available thing. I'm not looking at that. And it's like, well, I'm gonna go ahead and pirate this game that I can go on eBay and buy. But like GTA, now, and that's the irony of it. It's like you're saying you're gonna pirate now, but you're not gonna be able to pirate the games that matter in this case. Like, not that old games don't matter, but like, as an example, oh, well, they're not doing disc of GTA 6, so I'm going to pirate it. Well, you're not, because it's not even coming out on PC yet. And even if it does, it's going to be some kind of DRM or something related to it. It's going to be hard to crack. So that's the silliness of it. I know the whole if buying isn't owning, then pirate isn't stealing thing, but most people are going to just try to pirate stuff that has been pirated for decades now anyway. So I'm like, that doesn't even make sense.
And that's kind of the irony about why physical games went away from PC like decades before we are where we are now. I will say, on the point of pirating old games, I will say at least you're right in that those old games are accessible. In some cases, it does depend on whether they are affordable. For example, as you know, the Neo Geo AES Plus is coming out in November. Neo Geo is infamous for being, at the time, one of the most expensive, it was the most expensive console of its generation. And the games were the most expensive games on the most expensive console. At the time, when Neo Geo came out, I think it was around $600. In 90s dollars when it came out. So if you adjust for inflation, it was like almost over $1,000. And then the games were $200 to $300 brand new, depending on the game. So you fast forward to today, and it's very rare to find a Neo Geo game by itself less than $1,600 to $1,000. So for most people, it's unattainable, right? So for those people that are just like, you know what, I'm just going to pirate the ROM and play it on an emulator, that's a little bit more justifiable because it's just plain out of reach for a lot of people. That said, that argument does go away and goes back to what you're saying in November, because there are some games that are getting re-released that will only be $90. So
yeah. And I mean, like, there is a market where people are making repros and stuff like that. So I get that too. But like, as an example, like to your point, like I own Phantasy Star Online episode 1 and 2 plus, was different from regular episode 1 and 2. But I think my brother has my copy of that. So I backed it up on my GameCube so I can still play it. Like there's and so as an example with episode 1 and 2, regular that, right? It's $200 on eBay right now. The American version. The Japanese version is $66. Why can't you buy the Japanese version and then patch the ROM or download the English ROM instead? Like there's ways to kind of get around that. And in most cases, the Japanese art is better anyway. So why not just get the Japanese version and then download the American version? Like there's so many ways to deal with it.
You know what's hilarious? The irony is that Neo Geo had solved that problem decades ago. So the Neo Geo AES, right, came out in the 80s. So all of it, from the day it came out till if they stopped making it, all of the games had all the regions on one cartridge. So let's say you bought Metal Slug from Japan, right? You bought the Japanese copy of Metal Slug. If you had the Japanese, which, by the way, if you want a mint copy of Metal Slug, especially if it's in the box, costs $40,000. Actually, no, $90,000. Just insane to me. But anyway, if you were one of those few people that have a copy of the first Metal Slug, and it was a Japanese copy, and you got an American AES, when you pop it in the American AES, it just detects that it's the American, and it just runs the American version of the game. Now, later, there was this guy that he came up with something called the Unibios, right? So it was a BIOS that you could load into your console. So then if you had an AES with the Unibios loaded onto it, you could then change what region your console was. So if you wanted to play the Japanese version, it didn't really matter which game you bought. You just went into the BIOS and switched it to Japan, and it would play the Japanese game. And it's just funny that SNK figured that out like decades and decades and decades before region-free games became a thing.
Yeah, because like as an example, on Nintendo's part, right? Like the N64's quote-unquote region locking was just the way the cartridge slot, like you could get an adapter where both fit, right? But for the GameCube, changing the region like is probably one of the easiest things to do with a soldering iron. But even like if you look at Super Smash Bros. Melee, like any copy of it loose is going for like at least 40 or 50, right? When I bought some stuff from Japan like a couple years ago, mainly to like get a bunch of GameCube controllers and flip them. But like that, they kind of just threw that in with it. Like, here, just take it. Like, we don't even like, and then I can still play it on a console and switch the language to the US and be fine. Like that. So a lot of retro games still have that too, where there's multiple regions on one like copy of the game. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that does still exist. But still, it's just again, like it's just another case for retro games, man. Because modern games are just not going to be that anymore. Yeah. Now the retro market's going to be booming, and then you got companies like Analog and ModRetro and others that keep breathing life back into it with things like the Analog 64, which I have, the M64, which is due to come out soon. You know, the Analog Pocket, the Duo. Can we take a second to talk about this shit actually? Because like I'm going to get the ModRetro. Like I've already set my mind to do it. It's a pretty good value, but the SuperStation, I'm actually pretty disappointed in. Yeah, SuperStation let down. Yeah, because it's literally just a Mr. FPGA, right? But then like they're selling people the disk drive, and the disk drive doesn't even work. And they're like, it'll come eventually. I did not hear about the disk drive not working. I did not know about that. Yeah, so I've seen people talk about it, but I was watching like Wolf Den, and he was like talking about it as well. And I was like, man, like I was a little sad because again, I like the PS1, like the PSONE, like I like that one. And then I was like, oh, you can get the disc drive with it too and stuff like that, because I do have a good bit of disc games on it. And then to find out that like the disc drive doesn't even work, it's just like, super disappointed by that.
I will extend a little bit of grace. Shout out to Taki Udon. I don't know if you know who Taki Udon is, but Taki Udon is he was the developer
For the
and sort of, yeah. He was a developer and the brains behind SuperStation, as well as a couple other stuff. He also came up with he helped develop the Mr. Pi, which was a more affordable version of the Mr. FPGA. And the whole point of the SuperStation, I think the problem is it was poorly marketed, because the way the SuperStation 1 looked, it looked like a PlayStation 1. So when people look at the console, they're thinking, oh, it's an FPGA PS1, kind of like the analog 3D and the M64. It's not. It is just a consoleized Mister. So the whole point of getting the SuperStation was, it was the same thing as buying a Mister FPGA, but without all of the complications of it. Because the thing about people who are interested in FPGA gaming, retro gaming, you have to buy the component, put it together, and set it up on your own. Whereas at least with the SuperStation out of the box, from what I understand, the PlayStation 1 core was already loaded. So at least out of the box, as long as you had PlayStation 1 ROMs, not discs, ROMs, you could load them into the system and they would pop up and work. Whereas with the Mister, if I bought a Mister FPGA, I have to put all the parts together, and then I have to program what are called the FPGA cores. So you can kind of think of the cores as a digital console or a virtual console that you are loading into the device, so that way you can load the ROMs of whatever console you're trying to run. So if you want to play N64 games on your Mister, you had to load an N64 core in it. If you want to play Neo Geo, you had to load a Neo Geo core. Even the arcades, like whatever arcade you're trying to run on the FPGA device, you had to load the specific core of the boards that the arcades are running. So if I wanted to play Marvel vs. Capcom, the first one, for example, that ran on CPS2. I had to load a CPS2 core on the Raspberry Pi. The whole point of the SuperStation is it simplified it by at least having a PlayStation already loaded on, the PlayStation core already loaded onto the device. And so you're off to the races. But yeah, everything else, it is still at the end of the day, a DIY machine. Yes, there's a little bit of simplicity that was added to it, but yeah, it's not a turnkey console the way the analog 3D and the ModRetro are, where it just works out of the box. You put your game in, you run. It's not much that, and it's funny. I got into long debates with people that were saying, well, the SuperStation is better than the analog because you can load more cores onto it. And I'm like, brother, the average person, including myself, does not want to spend time tinkering with this. I just want to play my freaking games. And the analog 3D, when I took it out the box and popped Diddy Kong in, the thing fired right up. You can't do that with the SuperStation. I can't take my copy of Rival Schools and pop it in a SuperStation. I still have to buy the optical drive, and I'm now finding out from you that the optical drive doesn't work out of the box.
Right.
It's crazy.
It's not working. They're saying that functionality is going to come later, but that's the most disappointing part for me, right? Because I understood this in Mr. FPGA, right? Like, I knew what I was getting into when I was considering getting it, but I was like, okay, it's either this or I get a PS1 and I go through hacking, shell upgrade, stuff like that. So I was weighing them out, right?
You're better off doing that.
Yeah.
Unless somebody like Analog comes out with an honest to God legit PS1 FPGA, you're better off doing that route, honestly.
Yeah, because I really wanted to give the SuperStation a shot. Obviously I like the look and stuff, and I'm like, okay, I understand what it's doing, but then hearing that like the disk drive isn't working yet is like really disappointing.
Yeah.
And then begging
your dad I think it was your dad, you said,
Yeah.
begging him and offering him a king's ransom for his OG PS3, which already works for PS1, and there's no region lock, and it's HDMI,
Well, see,
and it does upscaling.
right. Well, see, I have my PS3 that does that. It's just the PS2 compatibility was the part that I really wanted that for. So I was like, I got to see if I can convince them to let that go. But ideally, I wanted something like, because my original idea was like, and this is a tangent aside from this, right? But my original idea was like maybe get the slim PS1, get the little screen, all that kind of stuff, and then I don't know, figure something out with that or whatever. But I might not go that route. But yeah, because I have ways to play PS1 games or whatever. But I was like, I was thinking about like, and obviously if I go the ODE route, then my physical disc won't even matter still. But yeah, that's why I was kind of torn about it. But I guess the most disappointing thing about the Superstation and these consoles in general is like the promise is like buy this on the promise that something's gonna work.
Yeah. That's ModRetro is going through that right now.
Yeah, and it's disappointing because it's just like, all right, I'm going to get the ModRetro. I've waited this long for it. Like the price point's good. Again, I'm the purple looks nice, the red looks nice. I can't do the other colors, whatever. But the whole like, yeah, we'll get this stuff eventually. Like you'll get these features eventually. Like I'm not digging that, and that's the part that really disappoints me about the Superstation. Because otherwise, like if the Superstation by itself works fine, apparently I haven't heard many complaints about it. Yes, it's an FPGA. It's not a straight up PS1 like type like FPGA console. It's all the other stuff. Cool, like that's fine, right? They're eventually going to have a console mode, which it'll just kind of work like a PS1 if you choose to activate that. But again, eventually, the same way it'll eventually, the dock you paid an extra $40 to $50 for will eventually work on it. And so, like the thing with like Bob from Wolf Den is that he had to wait a long time compared to other people that got the Superstation because he also pre-ordered the dock and then they got the dock and then the dock doesn't work.
That's crazy. And then another option that you have is you could get any PS2 because any PS2 is backwards compatible with one. So you could go that route.
Right. Yeah, I got some options.
The region locking, I don't think it was region free on PlayStation 2 though.
Yeah, but Free McBoot will fix all that. So
yeah,
I'm not worried about that. And so like. Again, because I'm thinking about this stuff, I'm like, okay, part of me wants this stuff, like to get the stuff again to collect somewhat, not get too deep. But also, it's like, okay, I also like I'm gonna eventually introduce my son into this stuff or whatever too. So finding a good point of reference to that. So I was like, even if I like if I got the little PS1 with the screen or something like that, I'm like, okay, cool, that's something that can be very self-contained or whatever and kind of call it a day without having to like plug into a giant TV or anything like that. That could be cool or whatever. But in general though, like, man, like, yeah, I'm really just disappointed with like, I feel like I can't take any more disappointment from these like FPGA consoles anymore. Like,
facts.
Like I'm all like, remember how like Concord failed and then like not long after that another game failed and like, well, what's the next game to fail? How long is it going to take for that fail? You know what I mean? That's kind of what it feels like here. Because like I would rather them just wait until this thing is like has the key functionality that people are looking for them to ship it rather than them just be like, oh, okay, well, we're going to ship this now and then some undetermined time later we're going to add the functionality for this dock that you bought already. We can't tell you when it's going to be ready, but we sold you this dock that's not ready. You know what I'm saying? That part is nuts. I mean, that's way worse than anything ModRetro has going on. The only problem with ModRetro is the game changer, the thing that has so many people, including myself, falling back in love with N64 games on the analog is the overclock. Like games that had the potential to be great, but just ran like crap because of the poor optimization, basically get a new lease on life
when you overclock and set it to unleashed on analog 3D. And M64, I know in there they had a one pager where they said we actually can overclock higher than the analog 3D. I'm like, that's great, but none of these influencers that you sent all of these dozens of models to, some of who pre-ordered, by the way, and some of who didn't, they got hands on it, and none of them have shown off or demonstrated this overclock thing that you're saying is better on your platform than analog. So It's like, don't talk about it, be about it.
Yeah, again, it's nice that it could, but like, you know, in the game of theory, everybody wins. In theory, you could overclock it, but in execution, are you doing it? No. And that's why it's like, no one loses in the game of theory.
Right? That's actually a great quote.
Yeah, like that's what I always say in the game. Like, it's like, oh, well, like, because like I've had so many times where like we play games with somebody and we'll talk about the match and it's like, oh, well, I would have done this. Well, in the game of theory, everyone wins. In theory, I would have blocked. Oh, in theory, I would have grabbed. Well, in theory, I would have teched the grab. You see how stupid that sounds? Like in the game of theory, everybody wins. There's no way to lose in the game of theory. You'll always find a way out of it.
And then to talk about the stuff you were talking about and piracy, and then also to quote the great Gabe Newell, patron lord saint of Steam, basically, piracy is not really a theft issue; it's a service issue. So I use that quote for like the Neo Geo. Like I'm gonna get the AE. I've already pre-ordered the AES Plus, but I will not be partaking in the insanity that is Neo Geo AES retro shopping. I will have the flash cart. I went ahead since there's at least enough information on good faith for me to pre-order the flash cart, and those flash cards cost a pretty penny. But because of what it is, I went ahead and pre-ordered one. But like, if there's a game I really, really want and there's a copy of that game for $90, sure, I'll pick it up. But anything that's $500, it's going on the flash cart, bro.
Yeah, and here's the thing about the AES as well. Like, you know, it just works.
Yeah.
Like you plug it in, it plays the games.
Internet.
Yeah.
They have talked about overclock, but it's not like out of this world overclocking. And it's also like, because it's a 2D console, like nobody's expecting the kind of transformational thing you can kind of see on the N64. So like, and they've demonstrated that it works. We've seen it in action. Like you said, it worked. It doesn't have Wi-Fi hookup or any of that garbage. Like it just, it is what it is. So yeah, it's not, they're not selling on what could be. They're selling on what it is.
Right. Hey, well, while we're still here, what are your thoughts on the uptick in new characters coming to old video fighting games? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's amazing, and it changes the game. No pun intended. Of like, it opens so many doors that we didn't think exist. Because I mean, sure, when they first announced in Central Fiction that a new character was announced, like, one, that was surprising, but Central Fiction is not terribly old, and we kind of at least had somewhat of a reference of that doing in the case of Dragon Ball FighterZ, where Daima Super Saiyan 4 Goku was announced for the game, like, well after the game was supposedly ended for the game, and blah blah blah, and they're like breathing life back into it. But when they announced 2 new characters for Art of Fighting 3, and basically a revision of the game, Art of Fighting 3R, that was crazy. Because I mean, it would have been one thing, like, because what they did. So let's back up a minute. SNK has this thing going on called the Premium Collection, where they're basically hand-picking games from the old AES MVS library and bringing it back with some modern quality of life stuff. So, for example, they brought back Fatal Fury Real Bout 2. And they brought it back on Steam as part of the premium collection. It supports rollback and all of these quality of life stuff. But other than that, it's the same game as it was 30 years ago. Same game, no changes, no new characters, no nothing. Art of Fighting 3, completely different story. It's got balance updates along with 2 new characters in addition to rollback. So it's like, if they can do this for that, then that anything else is possible. Like maybe revisit. I almost want to laugh. Like, Capcom, please leave Street Fighter 2 alone. Y'all have done it to death. Just put Ultra out. Don't.
well, so.
But like they could add new characters to updates to like Alpha or Darkstalkers or like any of the old 20 and 30-year-old games. Like it sort of opens things up of the possibility, and it's just crazy.
Yeah. Well, so okay, let me start with Central Fiction. Central Fiction came out in arcades November 19th, 2015.
Mm-hmm.
It only feels kind of recent because the Switch version came out in 2019 and the Steam version came out in 2017. They ended up getting rolled back in 2022. But this game is 11 years old.
It's old, but it still had active work being done on it. Like it wasn't a quote unquote fully dead game support wise. And then there is this, I think it's called something Entropy. It's this Blaze Blue 2D roguelike.
Roguelike. Yeah,
side-scrolling roguelike, which I played. It's actually pretty good, but it's essentially using some of the assets from the Blaze Blue games. So I can understand the ability of them adding new characters to Central Fiction because the assets of the game, they still exist, right? SNK as a company has went through ever since Art of Fighting came out till now. SNK has gone through 3 revisions as an entire company. The development team that did Art of Fighting 3 is not there anymore. I'm not even sure if they still had the assets of the original Art of Fighting 3 game to do this, and yet they did it. So that's what makes Art of Fighting 3 this game changer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The Art of Fighting part, yeah. I'm like, that's cool that they're doing that, and maybe that will give it like a little like a shot of life, get people interested and stuff like that. I'm just like, I thought it was a little weird with them doing it for Dragon Ball FighterZ, but then I was like, well, because everybody thought Fighters 2 was just going to happen, and I was like, well, no, Xenoverse 3, but not Fighters 2. But then when
Xenoverse 3 is going to print money. Let's be real.
Then we might get a Fighters 2, but
Fighters 3 definitely sold well as for fighting game standards, but as a Dragon Ball game, it pales in comparison to Xenoverse.
Yeah.
And another thing, you also got to look at it this way. Daima had just finished up airing on Crunchyroll and wherever else you can watch Daima. So it was an easy market play and low cost thing to do for them to take a character from Daima and put them in Fighters and sort of flip the asset. Hey, we'll make money off the DLC character and get people. Maybe if you didn't watch Daima, but you play Dragon Ball FighterZ, maybe there's a chance that you might be interested in watching Daima to either stream it or pick up a copy of it or read the manga. You see, there's a marketing argument to be made in the case of Dragon Ball FighterZ. Central Fiction, I don't really know why they're paying attention to Blaze Blue.
And that was my confusion. I'm like, why?
We still don't know why, because the lead developer, the guy who came up with Blaze Blue, is no longer with ArcSys. So I'm kind of like, where are they going with this? Was this just a celebration of the game? And then Art of Fighting is effectively a dead RP. Other than respect to my SNK fans. I'm a diehard SNK gamer, but Art of Fighting is effectively a dead IP as far as where the interest is in SNK. The two games that elicit any sort of excitement or respect from the FGC is King of Fighters. Well, okay, three. Excuse me. I'll say three. Is King of Fighters, Fatal Fury, Samurai Showdown. That's it. That's it. You're not gonna. And I remember SNK had hinted that they were doing stuff with Art of Fighting because they came out with they had like a teaser that was basically an old intro to Art of Fighting 3. So everybody was like, "Oh my God, are they going to put out a new Art of Fighting game?" And I was of the one of the guys. Shout out to Giuseppe Swag because he's one of the biggest guys that covers any and all things SNK as far as like new and recent games. But he was like, "Would you guys be excited over a new Art of Fighting, a brand new Art of Fighting game?" And there were people in the thread that were like, "Yeah, I'd be stoked." And I'm like, "Please, God, no." Don't put out an Art of Fighting game. It's going to bomb. Just put out a collection. Just put out an Art of Fighting collection on modern consoles. Celebrate it. Give it rollback too if you want, and call it a day. But you can't bring back a dead franchise. But this thing that they did better. Took an old ass game, added new content to it. It's still the same old ass game. That to me was brilliant. It was brilliant.
Yeah, I like that. But with Capcom does it, but then they'll charge you like a whole nother 20, 40, 60 just to play it. Like with the various editions of Street Fighter 2, etc., it's just like, here's Ultra now. We just added 2 characters, and you still have to spend like 60 or 50. So I was like, don't do it the Capcom way. I would rather just buy the characters. You give a free balance update, or if you don't, that's fine too. But
to be fair, they are doing what Capcom is doing. It's just they're not going to charge you $60 for it. So Art of Fighting 3R is not a download. It is a game that you buy that's available on Steam.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, I understand that. But like with ArcSys, the way they're doing it, they're not charging you for another version.
It's a DLC character you buy. Same thing with Goku. 100%.
Yeah, the Art of Fighting 3 part, but that makes sense because
the thing that annoys me about what Capcom does is, okay, you come out with Ultra Street Fighter, and you've heard me say this to death. You've come out with Ultra Street Fighter, fine. That is the definitive version of Street Fighter 2 now because of all the content and everything that's in the game. But you lock it behind Switch One exclusivity, knowing dang well that the majority of people who play fighting games don't play them on the Switch.
Right.
Now, if you wanted to put it on the Switch to try and get some of those players into buying a Nintendo Switch, cool. But making it exclusive was not going to do that. Right. What you should have did was just say, hey, we're releasing on the Switch, and we have this exclusive game mode, the little stupid Hadouken mode or first person mode they got in the Switch version of the game that I played once and never visited again. But hey, if you wanted to do like that to incentivize people to buy the Switch version, cool. But you could have released that game on every other platform beside that. Like, it's like, you guys hate money.
Yeah. And so like that's to the medium part, right? Like the first ArcSys, good job. Like Capcom's like, okay, I can understand depending on how you do that. With DOA 6, these people ain't got no business doing what they're doing.
DOA 6 last round is the biggest tragedy I've ever. First of all, DOA 6 needed redemption. I don't know if or how aware Koei Tecmo is aware of that, but DOA 6 left a bad taste in people's mouths. I personally like the game. As far as from the mechanic and gameplay standpoint, it's DOA, it's fun, it's great. I like I guess it was called the burst system, like their version of Tekken's Rage Art. They have a similar system in the game. It's fun, it's legit, it's solid. But DOA 6 left a bad taste in people's mouth because with DOA 5 last round, they took the monetization aspect of DOA 5 last round, which was beloved, and they're like, we're going to wring you dry or attempt to wring you dry. Like, it's one thing if you're selling like 200 pieces of costume for every character like they did DOA 5. Like DOA 5 had almost $300 to $400 worth of DLC content. That's a lot of money, but at least there was a ton of content to justify that purchase. Like, that's like almost 20 to 30 costumes per character if you buy all the DLC. And that's a ton of content. But with DOA 6, when it first came out, they had this thing where you could change the color of the person's hair, but you had to pay money to do that, right? So let's say my main is Kasumi, right? And I wanted Kasumi with blonde hair. I had to pay essentially for the customization to make her hair blonde. But you know what the part was? If I wanted to change it back, I had to pay money to do that. Yeah. Now, eventually, after all the backlash, they turned that back. And then there was the fact that they pulled the competitive scene. A lot of the tournaments that they were going to host for DOA 6, they pulled away from. So essentially, because of all the controversy and then the pullback from the competitive scene, they lost all the momentum of the game, so it just left a bad taste in people's mouth, even though DOA 6 is a decent game. All they had to do was release last round as a update to the game. So if you're like me and bought vanilla, last round you get as a free update. Now, any new DLC that you release after that, by all means, charge me for it. But you're asking me to drop, I believe it's like $40 or $50 for last round without the guarantee that any DLC that I might have purchased for DOA 6 will even work on the new game, even though the new game is just a revision. And on top of that, you haven't done any balance patches. You have bug fixes, fine, but no balance patches. If you Kasumi and Mai, you have to Kula and Mai, if I want to have those characters, I have to repurchase them. And you have no rollback netcode, and there's no crossplay.
And then they try to charge you for a new DLC character.
And then that's what I mean. I have to rebuy.
No. They announced a new character.
Oh yeah, Now the new DLC character, having me pay for the new Minato, I think her name is going to be, charging me to buy her, fine. That's the least egregious thing. The egregious thing is basically giving you the Ultimate Marvel 3 treatment, right? Where where Ultimate Marvel 3 was a iteration of Vanilla Marvel versus Capcom 3, but it was a new game. You had to buy it as if it's a new game. They're treating last round as if it is a new game you have to buy, and that's utter poppycock. No.
Well, my problem with it is this, right? I'm not a huge DOA person, but when I hear last round, I'm thinking that's the last. I'm thinking it's the definitive version of it, right? Like, yeah. I'm thinking as a consumer that's not super familiar, I should get everything that came with the base game.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. You're thinking of last round as definitive edition.
Yeah, that as someone that's not familiar with it, that's what I would think of it as. Then to hear that it's not, and that basically most of your DLC could probably not be compatible. You have to purchase Mai and Kula again. No rollback, no crossplay, and then you have the nerve to to announce a DLC character instead of packing that character in last round in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, it's
like I'd see if they were like, "Hey, we're planning the deal." Like, if there were any kind of like heads up that like, "Hey, we're releasing new characters after this. There's going to be a character pass." Cool.
Well, they did say that. They did say that when they announced.
I might have missed that.
Yeah, they did say that. I hear what you're saying. At least the expectation of last round was that it was going to be similar to the DOA 5 last round. And I believe, actually, no, now that I think of it, I think DOA 5 last round was sold as a separate game. But the thing is, the difference between DOA 5 vanilla and DOA 5 last round is substantial. Like, it feels like a completely different game from DOA 5. So, yes, while you had to rebuy it, you're still, you felt like the value was there. Whereas this, it is the same game. There's a couple of visual fidelity updates to make it look slightly prettier, but for all intents and purposes, it is the same game. And you could have just delivered this as an update, similar to what
I was going to say, Virtual Fighter.
Yeah, similar to what Sega did with Virtual Fighter. So you had Ultimate Showdown. And so if you were someone, because Ultimate Showdown was at the time exclusive to PS4. So if you bought Ultimate Showdown for PS4, when Revo came out, that was a free update.
No, I think it was like $10. I had Ultimate Showdown. It was like $10.
Oh, okay.
But either way.
Oh, okay. Still, $10 is a hell of a lot better than...
Exactly. But
like
$10 for Revo was worth it.
Yeah, and all of your stuff carries over to Revo. You're not starting over. You would have at least had some kind of argument, like if you're like me, you had Final Showdown from Xbox. Yeah, you had to buy Revo because it's not the same game. Ultimate Showdown and Revo are the same game. Final Showdown was on the Lindenberg hardware. Ultimate Showdown Onward is running on Dragon hardware, so it's a completely different game. Yeah, which I sometimes have to remind people of. But then when they came out with World Stage was a free update.
Yeah. And see, that was the thing that was the disconnect for me, because I look at what Sega did with Virtual Fighter, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, Tecmo's going to do the same thing with like DOA. Nope. So I'm like, oh, okay, that was my expectation, and no,
that was mine too. Mm-hmm.
And then you pour salt in the wound and say, hey, this game's utter crap. You have to buy the DLC characters you already owned all over again, and possibly the costumes. And now here's some DLC characters as well for this game that we don't even actively support as far as like a competitive scene or anything like that.
Yep. Bull.
Yeah, I couldn't get jiggy with that.
While we're talking about fighting games, we also talk about like this whole discourse we're having that is kind of came out of, that continues to rear its ugly head, which is catering to casuals versus catering to the quote unquote FGC community and or the pros. Like whenever a new fighting game comes out, like the hype that goes into that game. So as you're probably aware, there's a sizable amount of Tekken players out there that are, or at least were. I mean, most Tekken players now have warmed up to Season 3 if they're still playing the game in Season 3. A lot of the balancing is now going to in favor of what they were asking for. People still have general issues with the overall game mechanics of the game. Same as people who complain about Street Fighter 6. Same kind of thing, game overly aggressive, blah, 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 blah. But this whole thing so Virtual Fighter Crossroads is upon us. And there's this idea, and I've heard many a Tekken player, and they're like, I'm going to leave Tekken 8 and go to Virtual Fighter, and I'm not looking back. And and every time I come across such a person that says that, the first question I ask them is, are you playing VF5 right now? Are you playing Revo right now? And the 8 out of 10 people I ask, they say no. So then that makes me ask, So why do you think VF6, or now known as Crossroads, why do you think Crossroads is going to be any different? Because they're now slowly starting to leak out, not leak, but release officially footage of Crossroads, and it still looks like Virtua Fighter 5. And or not Virtua Fighter 5, but traditional Virtua Fighter.
Yeah, it's still VF. It just looks a little flashier in some aspects.
Yeah, it just looks prettier. And so if your issue with Tekken 8 is that the game is overly aggressive and sometimes random, you're going to be in for a world of hurt when you play Virtua Fighter.
No, but it's fine. Like, because again, with the games being casual, it's like they not just casual as far as like entry, like level of entry to playing it. Like a game like Virtua Fighter needs casual Virtua Fighter fans. It needs those people that are gonna be like, oh well, I'm done with Tekken, I'm going to Virtua Fighter. Like, because then they'll get their 70, they'll play for a bit, and they might fall off. They might absolutely fall off. But it's better that they're delusional in that aspect and then go back to Tekken for the sake of Virtua Fighter.
Yep, true.
Because that's the thing. Like the fighting game people, it's not like how it is with shooters are kind of weird now. Like the only real shooter is like Call of Duty. But there was a time back in the day where there was like there was a multitude of different shooters where typically you were that kind of shooter.
Unreal, you had
Yeah, like you were either like basically on Xbox, right? It all boiled down to, did you play Call of Duty or did you play Battlefield or Medal of Honor or Halo? Like it was just kind of like that, right? And those people wouldn't stray too far away. Like very, you wouldn't get a lot of crossover where somebody's like, yeah, I play Modern Warfare and I also play like Halo. Usually it's like, oh, I'll play Modern Warfare and I'll play Battlefield 3 or something. But that's kind of it. In fighting games
nowadays, I feel like it kind of switches now. Like there isn't this diehard fanboy camp that there used to be back in the day.
Right.
If Call of Duty has essentially the clout is the most popular one, then that's what people will play. If Battlefield, because for a minute, because Black Ops 7 came out and it was kind of basically treated as mid, right?
Yeah.
And Battlefield was like on top for which was the first time in quite a while. And so a lot of Call of Duty players were on Battlefield for a little bit, and then the Warzone update came out, and now they're back to doing that. So
yeah, well, the thing about fighting games is that it's not quite siloed like that. There might have been a point where people were just like only move, like you were either 2D or 3D. Now, especially in this age of like content and stuff like that, like now, you want people to be like, oh, I'm tired of Street Fighter, I'm going to Tekken. Yeah. Oh, I'm tired of Tekken, I'm going to Virtua Fighter. I'm tired of Virtua Fighter, I'm going to My Little Pony. Like,
them's fighting herds. Yeah,
yeah. You need those people because the niche isn't that big. So like, you need these bandwagon people more than ever.
Yeah. I will say this though, when it comes to fighting games, I agree with you that most in the FGC tend to be at least initially agnostic until they find their favorite game of that moment. The only exception to that, hilariously, has been the Tekken community. There's anybody that just, it's both a blessing and a curse for Namco Bandai, to be honest with you. But if there's any group that just sticks to what they play, it's Tekken players. Tekken players may dabble on occasion, like if a Street Fighter game is there, yeah, they'll dabble in it just because other people are playing it in the moment, like if they're at a convention or something. But on their own, inside of that community, all they play, brother, is Tekken. It's crazy.
Well, I also think too, like the sheer amount of choice in games is going down too. Like, so as an example, if you didn't play Tekken, like there used to be Soul Calibur.
Well, as far as Namco Bandai games, sure, at least 3D games, it seems like that. Fighting games in general, I feel it's overwhelming how many fighting games are out now.
Well, as far as like mainstream, like the main stage, right? And so like as an example too, like yes, now there's like now there is Fatal Fury, right? But there was a time where it seemed like if you didn't play Street Fighter, it was just Mortal Kombat was the only other option for 2D fighters. Not necessarily that was the case, but those kind of were the big two. Like,
yeah, but I mean, fast forward to today, you got Invincible, you've got Tokon about to come out,
right?
There's 2XKO,
right. There's a lot of choice now, in as far as that.
They've now, you know, we were just talking about SNK. SNK released New Balance patch for KOF 15.
Right.
So that game is going to have a resurgence. Then you get into Unist and Melty Blood.
Okay, but the anime games are in like a class of their own almost, right? Like, and I'm saying this as someone that like loves Unist. Like, again,
you were a Persona 4 you guy for a while.
Yeah, and the thing with those anime games, those are like those are not easy to get into. They're easy to kind of like I'm telling you now, like if you're not like born to be a weeb and nice at those games, like you'll never be.
What's ironic though? You know what's ironic? People who don't understand anime games, they often talk about, because anime games have the one button combos, or simplified combos, right? That's usually like a trademark thing for many anime games is they have the simplified combos made for the casual weebs that just want to mash buttons with their anime waifu and go to town. But there's this deep learning curve of mastery that's underneath that. So it's like people have this misconception that anime games are basically dumbed down and simple, when some of the most frenetic and high level play I've ever seen is in anime games. It's hilarious.
Unist alone, like the crazy thing about Unist is that like it has the combo system that I would theoretically make in a game, but it's just like translating that into action for me is so difficult to do. I'm like, oh my goodness. And then if you think it's bad that you get juggled for like 15 seconds in Tekken, I dare you to whiff against somebody in Unist. Go ahead.
Yeah, Touch of Death is a thing that started from anime games. I mean, sure, older Marvel vs. Capcom and versus games had infinite combos, but those were glitches. Those were unintended consequences of them finding a bug that was never patched. Anime games, the mechanic allows, and in some cases encourages, touches of death. So TOD is not something that exists in most fighting games outside of anime fighters, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, and like I don't know, man. Like I was thinking about getting Melty Blood type Lumina, but apparently there's like another version of it coming or something like that. Yeah, I was thinking about it.
Yeah, I don't know about another version, but there's a new character coming out and some other stuff for it. Yeah.
Well, there was type Lumina, and now there's Twi Lumina, which I think is
okay.
Yeah, and so I was interested in Melty Blood because, what is the girl's name? It's eluding me right now. Eltnum is in Unist, and I was playing her in Unist, and I was like, oh, she's kind of fire. And they were like, oh, she's from Melty Blood. But then she's not in this Melty Blood, which is kind of weird.
Unist is also a French bread game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense why she's in it then, yeah.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll look into Melty Blood, and I'll be watching tournaments and stuff. I'm like, yo, it's gonna have to combo somebody in real life after seeing some of this stuff, bro.
I will say between the two, I mean, if you're like that in Unist, it shouldn't take you that time. It shouldn't take you that long to get good at Melty, because from what I understand, Unist is a higher level game than Melty, from what I understand, as far as like the execution and skill.
Well, let me say this. I was like that in BB Tag. BB Tag just kind of simplified Unist even further. I'm not like that in Unist. And I learned that quickly from playing Unist. I am not like that in Unist. I'm not like that in Guilty. I could never get, like, Guilty Gear just never resonated with me. Oh yeah,
and I know that
for me either. I stay getting clapped in Guilty Gear.
Yeah, well, it's not getting clapped in Guilty Gear. It's just it doesn't vibe with me. When Blaze Blue came out, I loved Blaze Blue. Such a fun game, and I have fun with almost every character. Of course, I come from the house of grapple bees, so I usually pick a grappler. Iron Taker's my main, but I can have fun with every character and enjoy. It's just something about the overall mechanic of Blaze Blue, as well as the lore and story, just really well done. Guilty Gear, I just could not vibe the same way with it. I don't know why. I could vibe with RIP kind of to what was it? The DNF Duel. So DNF Duel, I vibed with that game more than I ever did with Guilty Gear, even though that game, I mean, it's not dead, but you know.
Yeah, I don't think. I wonder if they are going to support Guilty Gear further, because I know they had that 3v3 mode that they were like playing around with. I don't know if that's like permanent in the game.
Guilty Gear Strive is still going on strong. Remember, they recently announced RoboKai as
the
new character.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, they did that.
Yeah. Strive is, for all intents and purposes, but Guilty Gear as a franchise, that's Arx's flagship game. That is their Street Fighter, their Tekken. So yeah, Guilty Gear's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Blaze Blue was always an open question. DNF Duel, because it's owned by a different company, the IP, and it was basically put together by a small indie team that worked on Arc System game. It was kind of, if it didn't explode out of the gate, it wasn't going to get support for that long. So that's kind of why it's a little anemic in terms of like what's out there for it.
Yeah,
2XKO though. 2X. Remember all of that nonsense about 2XKO already being dead, and we've got 2 new characters announced. They had the largest pot in Combo Breaker. Like,
yeah. I'm trying to remember because I'm looking at Arxis right now. Aren't they developing some other fighting games? Like, I thought they were doing another anime fighter.
Not that I know of. Because, like, the last little IP side project that they were doing, that they did, you know.
I could have sworn there was something else.
Well, Tokon is it. Tokon is it.
Yeah, I could have sworn there was something else other than Tokon.
No. Tokon is it, bro.
They published Hunter x Hunter Net Impact, but they didn't actually develop
it. Yeah, but they didn't work on Net Impact, and it shows.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that is it. Tokon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, damn, I could have sworn there was something else.
Yeah, no. Tokon is it.
Okay. Well, yeah, like, damn, I lost what I was going to say then. Yeah, it's just Tokon. Well, and we'll see how Tokon goes. I guess we'll play that, but yeah, I guess
mark my words. Tokon will eventually make its way to other platforms besides PlayStation.
Yeah, I can see it maybe after a year or two. I don't think it's going to stay a PlayStation exclusive.
Yeah,
especially because like PlayStation knows just from selling their like bigger IP games that moving them to PC significantly increase the sales of the game.
Correct.
Now you're gonna have this niche fighter that only like PlayStation and PC. Like no, like it didn't even work super well for Street Fighter V. Like Street Fighter V sold pretty well, but still, like they could have sold more if it was open.
Yeah. Not only that, but as per their mandate, you know, the single player games they're sticking to be exclusive only on PlayStation. But their multiplayer live service games, quote unquote, they plan on making it multi-platform. Tokon is a multiplayer live service game, technically.
Yeah. So I can see them definitely doing it. They'll probably have like a year of exclusivity or something like that. And it'll go over. That makes sense. Because again, they're just wasting money if not. So.
Yeah, and then kind of going back to what, you know, your initial topic about like old games coming back. Or like new character, new content. So with the AES Plus about to come back out in November, what I'm hoping is that some of these new games that are being released as part of the premium collection, I'm hoping that some of those games make their way over to the AES Plus as cartridge releases. Because, like, for example, Art of Fighting 3R. Now, I don't expect it to be online and all of that, but if they can release Art of Fighting 3R with the 2 new characters, King and Yuri, if they release that on cartridge for $90, I'll get it.
Yeah, I can see that being dope.
Yeah, and they recently re-released Ninja Masters as well, which Ninja Masters is a deep cut as far as Neo Geo games. It's basically Samurai Showdown, but with ninjas. So Ninja Showdown, for lack of a better word, if that helps you understand. But they released that game as part of the premium collection. If they put that out on the cartridge, I will buy it. And if they put out Real Bout Fatal Fury, which is outside of Mark of the Wolves, that's the only other Fatal Fury game I really, really like. If they put that out on cartridge, I'll also pick that up. I'm hoping that since they released them, that should fix any licensing issues that they may have with any of those games, and they'll just get it done. So,
right.
Here's hoping.
All right. I think that's a good place to stop. We've been going on for like almost 2 hours now, so I'm gonna chop
I feel like
stuff.
I figured that's what you were gonna do. I figured you were gonna edit these up and have one upload for, talking about, the PlayStation disc stuff and all of that, and then have another for the fighting game stuff. And